Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and I want to share some mistakes that I've made when it comes to upgrading certain parts and components on AR-15s that just weren't necessary, and honestly a huge waste of money. In fact, the waste of money was so big that I needed to share this information with you because I could have spent that on a lot more practical stuff like training, more ammunition, a higher quality optic setup. It's actually ridiculous how much money it really was when I added everything together. And there's 5 components in particular that I want to tell you about, which I just don't feel like I need anymore and cost me a lot of money. And this was all spurred on by my recent acquirement of the BCM Recce 16 that you see right here. And from the factory, it doesn't have a lot of fancy stuff. It's got a standard safety, it's got just your standard non-ambidextrous charging handle, a mil-spec trigger. Nothing crazy, but the more I get behind this rifle, the more I realize I don't really think I'm going to change hardly any of it out. So let's talk about what those 5 particular upgrades are, how much they cost, and the total of all of that is going to just blow your mind because I was just flabbergasted when I realized how much I'd really spent on things that I didn't need and just don't really matter, okay? Now, I do want to mention that Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel, and thanks to them, I can get out here, give you information like this, and tell you about things that I think are either worth your time or not worth your time. And we have a policy of honesty between the two of us when it comes to our partnership, and I appreciate Midway USA for allowing me to give you my honest opinion. So, right here we have my Wilson Combat Ranger, which you've probably seen in other videos in the past, and a very nice rifle, but it is guilty of having all of the upgrades I'm about to tell you about, which I think are kind of a waste of money and could have been invested in something much better or just not invested at all and just saved me money overall, right? And one of the problems I think is that people get a new rifle or they're working on a new build and they immediately start wanting to add these things, right? These are things that we think we need. So we're like, okay, cool, I've got this perfectly functional rifle from the factory, from a place that knows exactly how to build a high quality rifle. And now I'm gonna change all these things out because I think they're important, right? And the more I get behind AR-15s, the more I shoot these platforms and the more I learn about them, the more I realize how unnecessary some of that is. So the first thing that I've wasted money on when it comes to upgrades and just parts on AR-15s that I just shouldn't have wasted money on. The very first thing was an ambi safety. And right here, I have a Radian Talon ambidextrous safety. Now, Radian makes really good stuff. And you can see it's ambidextrous. Here it is on the standard side, on the left side of the firearm. But you also have this slightly shorter throw lever here on the right side. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about Radian. They make really high quality stuff and everything works exactly as it's supposed to. And I do like these safeties. But here's the thing. This thing was $60, okay? $60 so that I could have an ambidextrous safety that I almost never use. Now, if you're left-handed, this might be worth the investment. But as a right-handed shooter, I find this to be unnecessary. I don't know what else to say. I don't actually need it. Can it be convenient at times, especially if you're shooting in more of a precision style where you have your thumb on the opposite side of the firearm than you usually would? I guess there's some things to say about that, right? But in all reality, the benefits that this brings are very minimal. And in many ways, it can often just get in the way more so than even being a benefit. And so for $60, I added something that the rifle did not need. It already had a safety that worked perfectly fine. And I thought ambidextrous safeties were just a necessity. So I threw $60 at something that I just literally didn't need. And not to mention, by the way, there's no ambidextrous magazine release. There's no ambidextrous bolt catch. The only thing ambidextrous is the safety. So that's the first thing I think a lot of people probably waste money on. And I've noticed that because of using the BCM Recce 16 here that just has the standard safety here on the left side of the firearm, I never miss the ambidextrous safety. It works perfectly fine. And in fact, it's at least, the very least, just never in my way on this side of the gun. So why would I rush out to spend another $60 on this rifle when it already has a safety that works? Let's move on. Another upgrade or component that I've wasted money on and that a lot of people seem to waste money on, and we know there's lots of different options when it comes to this, but this is my particular example, is going to be a QD end plate for your lower receiver, okay? And this is obviously what connects the receiver extension to the lower receiver, and then it's tightened down with the castle nut. Well, right here, I have an end plate that accepts QD sling swivels, all right? So you can see it has one on both sides, and it even has one on the very back, all right? So here's the thing. This is a Troy M4 QD end plate. I know Troy is a contentious manufacturer when it comes to the Pro 2A community, and maybe I didn't know some of those things back in the day. Either way, it was $47, right? Did this rifle come with a standard end plate? Yeah. Did it need to have these QD sockets? Well, I do like running my sling back here at the end of the receiver, but I find it less important on a full-size rifle and maybe a little more important on something shorter, but I definitely don't need it. And I know a lot of people switch out to the Magpul ASAP end plate, or they switch out to other end plates, and in all reality, it was a lot of money for something that just isn't necessary, especially when almost every stock these days comes with a QD mount for your sling. Now the BCM, the Ricky 16 here, it came with the standard BCM end plate, which does have a QD mount on the very back. But I don't need that. And in fact, I don't really like this style of QD mount. But guess what? The stock has a QD mount on it. And I'm getting used to running my slings this way a little bit more because there is some practicality to it, especially if you're on a long ruck or something like that. But the other thing is that this end plate is properly staked with the castle nut. So if I actually wanted to swap it out, I would have to remove this properly staked castle nut from the factory just to do so. And that doesn't seem like a good idea, does it? When this thing is designed to be reliable from people who know a lot more about building these than I do. So, can it be nice at times? I guess, if that's what you desire, but it's definitely not required. And it's $47 that's not required, okay? Now, what's the third upgrade that I spent a lot of money on that I don't think is a requirement, and it's something you should definitely consider, okay? And like, this is just my experience. This is from me using these things and then moving to a rifle that doesn't have them and realizing maybe I didn't need them to begin with, okay? The next thing is gonna be the charging handle. Ambidextrous charging handle, okay? An upgrade a lot of people feel they need, and one that I don't necessarily think is all that big of a deal. Now, this one in particular is the Radian Raptor SDSL. It has gas-defeating vents built into it for when you're running the rifle suppressed, which you can see I am right now. And here's the thing. First off, I don't think the ambidextrous aspect of it is that big of a deal. I'm really just not that concerned with it. It doesn't seem to matter to me. Like I said, if I was left-handed, maybe. But as a right-handed shooter, not finding it to be all that valuable, okay? The other thing is that the gas-defeating vents and the design of this particular charging handle, it has some sensibility to it. But I can tell you from experience, it doesn't do all that much. Does it help a little bit? Sure. Is it making a noticeable difference where it's worth the investment? I don't know. All I can say is that after enough rounds fired, regardless of charging handle, if you're using a standard style suppressor, you're going to get gassed out either way. It might give you a little more time before you get gassed out, but it doesn't prevent it from happening. And now that I have a Huxworks Ventum that's a flow-through suppressor, it's even less of an issue and makes this charging handle even more irrelevant, okay? And this charging handle is $125. $125 for a charging handle. Did this rifle already have a charging handle? Yeah. Oh yeah, it did. Did I need to replace it? No. Did I think I needed to replace it? Yes. So I spent $125 on a frickin' charging handle when I could have just used a mil-spec charging handle in all honesty, right? And the BCM comes with the Mod 4B charging handle from BCM. It doesn't have vents, it's not meant to block gas or anything like that, and it's not ambidextrous, but it works, and I have no complaints with it, and it works every time. I'm not ever missing the fact that it's not ambi, okay? I'm just saying, this is what I'm experiencing. I'm trying to give you some ideas when it comes to what you're investing in and everything else, okay? Now, what's the third upgrade or component that I think could be a waste of money? Now, this is contentious, I know, and I want you to comment below what you think about this because I'm talking about backup iron sights. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have backup iron sights, but there is a way to waste money on them for sure. And sometimes they themselves are a waste of money especially if you're on a tight budget, okay? So what do I mean? All right, so right here on this Wilson Combat, I've got Wilson Combat aluminum folding backup iron sights, okay? They're good iron sights. I don't really have any complaints about them. But what I will say is that I don't know how much I need them. I have two sighting systems right here, an RMR and an ACOG, arguably two of the most durable sighting systems you can put on an AR-15. The likelihood of this sighting system going down is extremely low, and they both have to go down before the iron sights become relevant. Is that possible? Sure, but we usually operate under the 2 is 1 concept in the preparedness community. And I have two sighting systems here, which means I have one sighting system. Do I need 3 sighting systems? Maybe for peace of mind, right? Now, if I was only running a red dot, I would probably recommend getting some backup iron sights. But you really need to think about what you're doing when it comes to how many sighting systems you have on your particular rifle and how much you're willing to invest in that. And the other thing to keep in mind, another way you can waste money with backup iron sights is by buying cheap ones. Inexpensive backup iron sights are not worth the investment. At least that's been my experience. Polymer ones from Magpul, they break. They slide off the rail. They're not installed or using a mounting integration that's actually rock solid. So you're just spending money to have peace of mind at that point in many ways. So my suggestion with backup iron sights is that I don't think they're a bad idea. Don't misconstrue what I'm trying to say here. But would you rather have a better quality optic, or would you want to take some of the money from your better quality optic setup and spend it on iron sights instead? And if you're going to buy backup iron sights, you should probably buy good ones. And the good ones are expensive. So for example, Magpul Pro steel iron sights are going to cost you like $200. But those are actually good sights that'll actually hold up and do a good job. But now you're spending $200 on backup iron sights, and if you have no intention of ever actually using them, you could have spent $200 making sure your optic was more durable or of higher quality, right? And so I'm just trying to make you think about that, because first off, do I need 3 sighting systems on this rifle? And if I do, why would I spend $130 on these particular backup iron sights when I could have spent $200 to get the rock solid top of the line ones, which will actually last and do the job? That is a question you should try to answer. Polymer Magpul sights, at least from my experience at this point in time, are for your peace of mind more than they're for actually being used in a long-term situation. If your gun is going through a scenario where you're going to break an RMR and an ACOG, those polymer sights are probably not going to survive either. And the same thing could be said about even less expensive optics. I have a feeling a Primary Arms 3X micro prism at a $300 price point is going to break less often than polymer Magpul backup sights. So just keep that in mind. You could have taken the money from those backup sights and done something else. And those polymer backup sights are really close in price to these Wilson Combat aluminum ones, which I would say are an upgrade from those. But even these aren't really worth it compared to what you really want if you actually plan on using those sights. That's my opinion. And I don't have them on this BCM as of right now. Will I put some on? It's possible, because I'm a weirdo with OCD and I'm a prepper. So that makes me somebody who's constantly worried about things that probably don't matter. But in all reality, I have a main optic and a secondary sighting system already on this rifle. I have the 2 is 1 covered. So do I need backup iron sights? Probably not. Will I put them on here? It's possible. But I'm not saying I should. And honestly, the reason it doesn't happen right now is because this is an expensive optic setup. So I invested that $200 into the primary sighting system instead. All right, makes sense? Okay, so $130 on backup sights for this rifle that I have not needed ever once, but I felt like I should have, right? And so have I zeroed them? Yes. Have you? That's something else you should consider. If you haven't zeroed your backup iron sights, why do you even have them? But at the same time, this ACOG has never failed me. This RMR has never failed me other than getting snow inside of the emitter. But guess what? That's why I have the ACOG then. Do I need batteries for this? I don't. So just from my experience, feels like a waste of money unless you're going to invest in the really high quality ones and then you're going to actually use them. Okay? So I know that was a long one, but I know backup sights are contentious, all right? Fifth upgrade that I've wasted money on, and that a lot of people waste money on, and that I think you could do better for yourself with by not doing unless you get to the point where it's actually going to make a difference. What am I talking about? Your trigger, okay? This gun has a really nice trigger in it. It is the Wilson Combat TTU M2, which is a 2-stage, really light pull trigger. I mean, this thing breaks like glass. It's amazing. Very nice trigger. There's a couple problems though. First off, this is a cassette style trigger. What does that mean? It means that the trigger unit is housed in an aluminum body and it gets dropped into this mechanism, and all you have to do is put some pins in and you're good to go, okay? There are benefits to that. One of them is that Wilson Combat or any other company that makes these can tune them from the factory, and then when you get them, the actual trigger pull and everything else is exactly as it's supposed to be. Great, okay? But there are some downfalls. One of the most major downfalls is that all of the components inside that cassette trigger are small, which means they have a shorter service life and a higher propensity of breakage. And guess what? When a cassette trigger breaks, it's broken. One component fails, the whole thing's down because it's all one singular unit. As opposed to like a mil-spec trigger where if the hammer spring goes down, you can just swap in a new hammer spring and you're back up and running, okay? This is the BCM PNT trigger in this rifle, which is their polished nickel Teflon trigger. Single stage mil-spec trigger. Is it the best trigger I've ever fired or ever used? Of course not. It's a single stage mil-spec trigger basically, right? But what's good about that is that it's reliable. And the whole point of mil-spec triggers is that they reliably combust the primer. They reliably get enough weight behind that hammer to make sure the round goes off, which you can't say about all the lighter trigger options that are out there. Now you can say it about Geisley, but a Geisley trigger is going to run you $300. So what I see a lot of people do is they get a rifle, myself included. Look, I'm guilty of all these things. That's why I'm sharing it with you. I'm not trying to point fingers. I'm literally the guy who did this, who's telling you now why I don't necessarily think it's a great idea. They get a gun, and before they even shoot it, they've already swapped out the trigger, right? Do you need a better trigger? Are you shooting and training enough to where your skills have plateaued to a certain level where the only way to increase your accuracy and efficiency is to install a new trigger group? Answer that question honestly. Because in my opinion, this PNT trigger, which is just like an enhanced mil-spec trigger, is still a pretty good trigger. It's not preventing me from getting hits on target. It's not preventing me from being accurate. Could I be more accurate with a better trigger? Yes, but if I want that better trigger to actually be reliable, have a long service life, and be durable enough to deal with like a SHTF type scenario, then I have to invest in something like a Geisley. A cassette style trigger is nice, but it is not what you want when it comes to a long-term emergency scenario for those reasons that I stated. But they're usually less expensive. You can get a Rise Armament trigger group for like $120 and your trigger will be hugely improved over a mil-spec trigger. But will it be reliable? Will it last? Those are questions you have to ask. And for your ability, will it actually make you a better shooter? And the answer to that's probably no. So I'm actually going to keep this PNT trigger in this gun. I had the urge to immediately go out and get a Geisley and throw it in here and be like, yeah, you know, high-end, really nice stuff. I'm not even going to do that now. I'm just going to run with this trigger for quite a while until I get to the point where this optic is begging me for better accuracy and I'm a good enough shooter to deliver on that, but I might need a little bit more out of my trigger pull in order to accomplish that. That's at the point in time when spending $300 on that trigger might be worth it. But this trigger is $190. And it is a very nice trigger. Don't get me wrong. It's a nice trigger. Like this gun feels great to shoot. But it's $190 I didn't need. Because guess what? Mil-spec trigger could have just been in here for free already, right? And I could have just been on the range shooting with it with the $190 I saved being spent on ammunition instead. So that's the 5 upgrades that I think you can waste a lot of money on when it comes to AR-15s. And that's what I've learned after shooting these guns, spending a lot of time with this platform, and developing these opinions and this experience over time. And by getting this gun from the factory and not wanting to really change much about it, because BCM makes a high quality product and is going to put a gun together in a way that makes it work right. Whereas I'm just some guy in my garage, right? So I don't really want to change too much about this. Right now, this thing is factory stock, excluding adding a QD mount to the front for my sling and, of course, the optic. But everything else, I mean, obviously, it's got a Cerakote job, but everything else is the way it's supposed to be. So by getting this rifle, it made me realize I don't need to do all the stuff I thought I needed to do with this one. And you get that immediate urge to be like, oh, I'm going to put an ambi safety in, right? I actually have another Radiant Talon ambi safety sitting in my workshop right now. I could throw it in there right this second. I'm just not going to. I just don't need to. I could put another trigger in right now too. No, I'm good. I have other charging handles. It's fine. Like, I just don't think it's necessary anymore. And so let me know in the comments if you've made any similar mistakes, or if you agree with any of what I'm telling you right here. Even the end plate situation, right? And here's the thing. I told you I was going to tell you how much all this cost. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So, ambi safety, $60. QD end plate, $47. Charging handle, $125. Backup sights, $130. Trigger upgrade, $190. Total, $552. Holy shit. That's the price of a handgun. That's the price of a case of ammo. That could get you into a training course, right? That is a lot of money. That didn't get me anything other than slight benefits that you barely notice and feeling good about myself, right? $552 for a charging handle, a safety, some backup sights that are my third sighting system on the gun, right? A QD end plate when I already have QD sling swivel attachment mounts right here in my stock, right? It's insanity. What was I doing? But that is what it is. The charging handle it came with was already good, but I thought $125 would just make the difference, I guess. So listen, I'm not telling you what you have to do. I'm sharing my experience with you to hopefully give you something to consider and to maybe just think about not spending all that money, especially right away, and getting out and just shooting and spending that money on ammo and training, and then going, oh, you know what? I think I'd rather have an ambi safety for these few things that I've ran into where it would have been nice to have. All right, now you're good to go because you got the experience to tell you that that was something you needed, right? And here's the thing. People will go out and do these upgrades like I just went over, spend $550 on those upgrades that don't really improve anything about the gun, and then spend $100 on their red dot sight, right? It's nonsensical. $150 could have got you at least a decent entry-level red dot sight. But if you took the money you spent on a charging handle and a safety and a few other items, I mean, you're in aim point territory, right? So I just wanted to try to help everybody out with this concept because it's something I personally ran into, and I think, you know, I could have saved a lot of money and invested it into things that are more important than those items I just went over with you. Let me know in the comments. Tell me everything that you think I'm right about. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. Let me know other upgrades you think are a waste of money. And please let me know about the iron sights. I mean, I gotta hear this opinion on that. But like, three sighting systems actually necessary? Especially if we're talking about quality. ACOG, RMR, is that necessary? RMR, PLXC from Primary Arms, probably one of the nicest LPVOs out there right now. Is it required? Like, I really want to know. And anything else you need from me at all, you can go to magicprepper.com. If you're interested in supporting the channel, I have links to things like these sunglasses, which are called Ghost Wolves, and they're from Warbird, which is a newer company. Check that out. I got discount codes down below and everything as well. And honestly, I hope that I'm just helping people out with this stuff. I am not trying to disparage anybody who's done these things, because guess what? I did these things to this gun, which is mine, which means I made these mistakes. I'm not telling you from this high horse of like, don't do that because I said so. I did this and I realized maybe it just wasn't the best idea. And so now I'm telling you about it. Anything else you need from me, you know what to do. That's gonna be it for Magic Prepper.